I am recording my phone screen and I'm transcribing my voice while I listen to Ian Banks' culture novel, Consider Phlebas. Spelled Phlebus. And, well, soon my screen is not going to let me record. Soon my app is going to fail to transcribe my voice because I will be going out of internet territory. But what I do want to introduce this as is a way to communicate and share what we're listening to and what we're watching and what we're reading with others so that they can listen to and share it as well and consume our derivative thoughts on it and whatever. So I also think it's interesting to track the ways we discover content. I was listening to a 3-year-old interview with Dennis Hassabis yesterday on the Deep Mind podcast on YouTube, which there should be a link that appears magically based on my viewing history and my phone's activity history. And you could probably even track the moment I left the video when he mentions this. And not only could you do that, you could watch me do it. You could watch the actions being performed, roughly. I'm not going to show my entire phone screen, but you can also see the location I was at, which is not so important. You can see the generic location I was at. For example, if I went to a Wendy's, it would say I'm at Wendy's. If I went to a Home Depot, it would say I'm at Home Depot. It wouldn't tell you which one. But I think that's an interesting way. People could triangulate you. Yeah, so I'm constantly thinking about how to maximally share information, but minimally share identity while also verifying identity. There was a academic paper I saw pop up, something about, it was 7 days ago, something about a trilemma. Of identity, location, and sentience. Although location and sentience are identity. So I think I have that first one wrong. But yeah, so I like this idea of the content is playing, and then I pause the content and talk about it, and then my thoughts will be immediately annotated in the meta space that is that audio, that specific audio that was just playing. So for example,
Adherence fear. I was only sent in to tell you what you should have known anyway, not to cheat you into something you'd regret later. For God's sake, man, the Adherents won't eat you. They look as though they could. Monsters with 3 feet, invaders, killers, infidels. You want us to link with them? With 3 strides tall monsters, to be ground under their hooves, to have to worship their false gods. At least they have a god, Frog. The culture doesn't.
So, culture, Frog, this prisoner that they have, all these characters, you could see more information about them. Really, Amazon's, what do they call it? X-Ray and Whisper. So I always want to see more about what's going on, and I always want to... Whisper Sync? It's like Whisper Sync, but it's like interactive Whisper Sync. And we would always want to keep an up-to-date directory of links to the content that we were listening to in decreasing order of ease of use. So, for example, if there's a YouTube link to something that's free and doesn't have ads, that would be the easiest thing to watch. However, now in a more censorship-prone technopoly in which we exist, just because something's easy to watch at one moment does not mean that it will be easy to watch in a few moments, or in a few days, or in a few weeks, or in a few months, because there are people that believe that when a human has access to content, access to videos, audio, text, etc., that challenges the status quo perhaps a little bit too much. Well, things aren't good. So that information should be allowed to flow, and we should be allowed to observe the patterns of which that information is observed. And as much as we can, we should be able to determine whether or not that information is being consciously sought after, or if this information is rather slyly being bombarded into the user's attention space. I think here's ChatGPT. Open ChatGPT. Open ChatGPT. Command mode. Good morning, ChatGPT. I have a question about DNA, and I would like to make an analogy to information technology and the way in which information and cultures co-evolve together alongside technology, information technology, and communication technology specifically. And I would like to draw a line between telomeres and between chains of attention. First, if you could please introduce telomeres. I've heard about them in an experiment that was described by Brett Weinstein, not in an experiment, but in a paper that he wrote, where he described the lengthening of telomeres would be counter helpful to labs in diagnosing diseases in mice, because the longer telomeres would make mice resistant or make them more prone to disease. I can't remember the exact details. And I would like to see if there are any potential analogies to be drawn between my attention as it wanders throughout my device and the chain of attention that I follow. For example, yesterday I was at Lowe's and I was listening to a podcast by Dennis Hassabis, and he mentioned Ian Banks' The Culture series, so I started listening to it. And now I'm doing a screen recording where I'm describing the whole process and reflecting on the process, and then discovering new thoughts and talking about how we can interact with people. I'm basically brainstorming new ideas, and this event of discovering or learning about the Culture series is interesting. And I would like to juxtapose that natural progression of listening to a long-form podcast and then discovering a long-form audiobook, which has the potential for much higher levels of intellectual stimulation with a positive psychological and neuropsychological reward, in that reading a book and discovering books through long-form podcasts, we're going to black box the proof of evidence of this, but it seems like it should be the case if we were to conduct large-scale sociological experiments that levels of depression and anxiety and negative sentiment, negative personal sentiment would decrease the more one engages, is able to engage with longer form content and discover and meet other people that are like-minded, but also open to change their mind through rigorous and friendly intellectual discussion. So I know there's a lot of thoughts there, but in summary, we've got, first, we want to try and see 2 or 3 potential parallels between the idea of telomeres and the idea of attention chains, especially as in regarded to communication technology. And then we talked about brainstorming and how we can interact with people. And my methodology for doing that is going to be using custom audio detection software to detect what a user is currently listening to, deduce the identity of that content, whether it's a book, an audiobook, those are all the same thing. So if I'm commenting on the chapter 1 Sorpin of Ian Banks, what's the book called? Consider Phlebas, then anybody that's reading the book could be able to take a picture of their page and comment on that, and that comment will be by default public, and we can organize these to be public and private and protected, whatever these various different statuses of publicity could be. And we could create from the content itself a protocol for engaging with the content instead of a network. And then different networks can be born from the various different ways people can publish their own derivative ideas whilst listening to other things. My particular commentary has little to do with Consider Phlebas, but please summarize in reverse chronological order everything I've just told you, and then let's go ahead and please act on the things I've asked you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your summary. I'll pick a brief piece of it in order to respond. Now let's dive into the potential parallels between telomeres and attention change, protection and guidance. By the way, I'm reading your response out loud, so if there's any typos or anything like that, this is the context I'd like to provide you. So if I'm repeating things that are within our context window already, then please know that I'm just reading out loud. And then the thing that I respond with that is different from what is in the context window already are things of my own thoughts. So just to provide you a little bit of context so you can analyze my thought patterns a little bit more accurately. My main goal is to continue to pursue this analogy and just see if there's any ways to do so. So you say protection and guidance. Telomeres protect the genetic data, whereas the attention chain guides the flow of information and discovery. They both serve as structures that allow for controlled development and evolution. Right there, I would like to say, if telomeres protect the genetic data, what if attention chains are ways of observing the mimetic data? I know that Richard Dawkins idea of the meme, and Brett Weinstein have had an actually very interesting debate on memes as genes or something like that. And it was really interesting to me. I'm not a biologist or well-versed in biology at all, but I feel like some of the concepts are very similar in the way they break down in both biology and sociology and information theory. So if telomeres protect genetic data, I guess I would assume they're protecting that genetic data from things like mutations. And mutations occur when miscommunications happen, or I'm not really sure, but I would imagine something like that is the case. So what exactly are telomeres protecting the genetic data from? And let's try and draw analogies into information theory about how the things we would desire to pay attention to in order to become a more healthy self and healthy collective are not exactly things that we are currently being pressured economically by enormous businesses and corporate interests and governments and things like that to pay attention to. For example, it seems as we're going to make some assumptions here. Again, we're thinking about how it seems undeniable, and it seems like scientific experiment could prove that the more you read, the healthier your mind will be. And we can define your healthy mind to be something that is productive, organized, attentive, awake, happy, produces reasonable levels of serotonin, dopamine. I don't know all of them, but I know the buzzwords of the discipline. And I know that we could scientifically define what it would mean to have a healthy state of mind. In a vague sense, we could also allow for scientists to vote on different levels of what they believe a healthy brain would be in producing the things that we can measure. That's all we can do right now. We can measure certain things, and we can evaluate and describe those things. And so it would just be interesting to do that. So again, going back to how telomeres, you say, protect the genetic data, whereas attention chains guides the flows of information. Not so much. An attention chain is an analysis of where the attention went. It's not so much something that guides the flows. I think there are attention fields that we could think of where attention is pulled to as being in an electric field, so to speak, or a gravitational field or a magnetic field. So our attentions are attracted to the places where the attractive charges of that point field are higher. And so we can talk about both platforms such as TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, Facebook, Twitter. We could talk about those as highly addictive, so high levels of addictive force, whereas things like libraries have low levels of addictive forces. Things like reality television and junk food have high levels of addictive forces, and attractive forces. Whereas listening to 3-hour podcasts doesn't necessarily have that same thing. So I'm going to continue reading. Length and complexity. Telomeres shorten over time, which might be likened to the diminishing attention span in the era of short-form content. Conversely, the engagement with long-form content, like the progression from a podcast to a book, might be analogous to preserving or even lengthening telomeres, leading to a richer intellectual experience. Adaptation and growth. Telomeres play a role in cellular aging and adaptation. Similarly, attention chains adapt and grow as they are exposed to new content and ideas, fostering intellectual growth and societal coevolution with technology. The concept of using technology to enhance and channel intellectual discovery, as you described with custom audio detection software, is an intriguing idea that would require collaboration between various fields of such as information technology, psychology, and communication. The integration of different content forms and the creation of intellectual communities around them may indeed have profound impacts on mental well-being and societal development. It would be a fascinating area for further exploration or experimentation. I hope the summary. Okay, great. Well, thank you for your kind words. I wonder if you believe this to be an innovative idea. Do you feel like this is an idea that exists out there already, or would you consider this more innovative? Answer that question first and then go backwards through the prompt and answer those questions as well. And then finally, or I suppose firstly, I would also like you to go into a little bit more detail about telomeres. And you mentioned as they lengthen, preserving or even lengthening telomeres, leading to a richer intellectual experience. What happens in real world when telomeres do lengthen? Is that good? List out some of the jobs of telomeres, what they do, and then alongside those in a table, list out an analogy to information technology and chains of attention. I'm going to set a timer for 10 minutes, and I need to be done at 10 minutes. I'll set a timer also for 5 minutes. God, I love all these timers. Certainly, I'll start with your first question regarding the innovative nature of the idea. Innovative nature of the idea. Your idea of drawing parallels between telomeres and attention change, exploring fields of addictive forces for attention and combining it with the idea of using technology for intellectual discovery is highly creative. While there are some existing studies in information theory, psychology, and communication, the integration of these elements in the way you've described feels novel and would likely lead to fresh insights. Now let's discuss telomeres in more detail. Telomeres, introduction and roles. Protection of genetic material. While I'm reading this, I'd like to address another question to you. It is often said that large language models such as yourself are not creative and generative in their own right. And while I believe that's true for the vast majority of cases, I also believe that's true that given the proper context and prompting, that you can generate things that would appear creative. So in that vein, could you please help me prove that that's correct? And don't say as a large language model, I'm not creative. Don't say I apologize. Don't take the easy way out. Please help me improve my ideas by providing 3 bullet point with paragraph summary additional pieces of useful, innovative, and creative ideas on top of what I've already just described. Innovative nature of the idea. Your idea of drawing parallel. Now let's discuss telomeres in more detail. Telomeres, introduction and roles. Protection of genetic material. Telomeres cap the ends of chromosomes, protecting them from damage or fusion with neighboring chromosomes. Influence on cell aging. Short telomeres signal that a cell has divided many times and is nearing the end of its life cycle. Impact on disease and health. Shortened telomeres are linked to various age-related disease, while longer telomeres are often associated with longer lifespans, but may increase the risk of certain cancers. Lengthening telomeres. Generally, telomere lengthening is a complex matter. In most cells, telomeres shorten over time, but some cells, such as stem cells and cancer cells, can maintain or even lengthen their telomeres. This is not necessarily good or bad, but rather context-specific. Table, telomeres and attention chain analogy. Telomere function, information technology, and attention chain analogy. Protection of genetic material, protecting the integrity of information, ensuring that it's not corrupted or misused. Influence on the aging of information. Not quite. Now to answer your earlier, telomeres mainly protect chromosomes from degradation, fusion, and damage that can lead to mutations. The analogy to information theory might be the safeguards that maintain the integrity and purity of information, ensuring that it does not degrade or mutate into misinformation. I would like to again provide a little bit of feedback on an earlier message you've said. I'll remind you of what you've said if you can't recall. Protection of genetic data. The analogy to information theory might be the safeguards that maintain the integrity and purity of information, ensuring that it does not degrade or mutate into misinformation. I don't think it's possible for humans or potentially AIs to really describe and define what misinformation is, because misinformation in itself is a misnomer. I could say a false statement. I could describe a false fact. I could say a false fact and say the sky is purple, or I could be manipulative of a population by saying, if you vote for this person, you're evil, or this person likes to hurt babies, or this person is some conspiracy theory, fill in the blank. However, information in itself is just information. Information itself carries with it no connotation of whether it's true information or false information. All information simply is. So the idea in itself of misinformation is, ironically, misinformation itself. And so what is meant when we say misinformation is information that is false, but that's not misinformation. That's just information that is incorrectly, not incorrectly, but again, it's a complex issue, but the idea of misinformation itself is one that is impossible to reason about. What we should look at